I knew something was wrong the second Amanda pulled up the first slide. It wasn't the usual team progress deck she recycled from last quarter. No, this one had a new title, clean formatting, and Jesus Christ, my diagrams. My exact diagrams. Color-coded flowcharts I'd made on a Red Bull bender at 3 a.m. just 6 weeks ago. Only now, they had her name in the footer. Amanda L., Director of Engineering. She stood there in her silk blazer, nails French-tipped to hell, smiling like she'd rewritten the laws of logic. We streamlined legacy architecture, she said. Like she even knew what legacy meant beyond being born into a mortgage-free condo. I personally oversaw the integration. That line almost made me laugh. Personally, the last time she opened the repo, she called it, that black terminal screen thingy. I sat 3 rows back, laptop closed, hands folded so tightly I could feel the crescent of my nails digging into my palm. Not a single executive looked my way. Not once. She clicked to the next slide. My changelog sanitized and renamed team deployment checklist. She'd scrubbed every last initial, every MJ backend cleanup, every auth patch, every line that proved I was the one who had built the damn foundation they were all clapping for. My ears were ringing. Not angry ringing. More like a high-pitched frequency you hear after a car crash. I wasn't mad yet. Not shocked either. It was something colder. A switch flipping. A curtain lifting. Like watching a magician screw up and realizing the trick had never been real to begin with. And look, if you've gotten this far, pause for half a second, hit the like button and subscribe. Over 97% of people listen without doing either, and I promise you it makes a huge difference to the team that brings you these stories. Okay, back in. Amanda didn't notice me. She never really did. Not unless she needed something translated into plain English for the C-suite. Now she was basking in their praise like she was the second coming of Steve Jobs in patent leather heels. At one point, the CFO asked, "How'd you handle the dependency bloat from the March release?" That was my nightmare. I'd rewritten half the API calls from scratch over a weekend while my dog had the flu. Amanda didn't even blink. We trimmed the fat and optimized our modularity, which meant absolutely nothing, like saying you fixed a car by giving it a pep talk. Someone clapped. Then everyone clapped. I smiled. I smiled like I was just another happy cog in the machine. The intern next to me whispered, "Wow, Amanda's a genius." I almost choked on my own spit. When the meeting ended, I didn't storm out or confront her. I waited. I walked out slow like I had nowhere better to be. While Amanda accepted a standing lunch invite from 2 VPs and strutted past me like I was part of the furniture. She even winked. Winked. Like I should be proud she found my work useful. It wasn't until I got back to my desk and opened the final production repo that I realized something even colder. She hadn't just removed my name from the credits. She'd overwritten my final commit signature. Replaced it with hers. That wasn't just ego. That was theft. She didn't understand what she just signed off on. 2 days later, I sent the email at 9:02 a.m. Subject line: Resignation. Body: Effective Friday. No further notice required. That's it. No dramatic preamble. No bullet-pointed list of grievances. I didn't even capitalize the closing. Just thanks. And my name. I stared at it for 5 full minutes before hitting send. Not out of doubt, just letting the weight of it settle. Amanda replied 9 minutes later. Not even a full sentence. Just, understood. Please schedule your exit interview with HR. No exclamation point, no fake sympathy. Like I was a missed meeting. Like I hadn't just spent the last 5 years duct taping their entire infrastructure together with whatever open source mess I could wrangle at 3 a.m. while she curated Synergy. I walked into her office with the badge, the lanyard, the stupid branded hoodie. HR handed me my first week. Placed them all neatly on her desk. She was on the phone. Held up a finger. One SE's MJ's dropping off his stuff. Yep, Friday. We'll be fine without him. Then turned her chair so I'd get a nice view of her talking over me. I didn't say a word. Just nodded like we were both part of the same bad improv sketch and walked out. Nobody asked where I was going. No Slack pings. No hallway nods. One dev half muttered, "Damn, already?" as I passed. Then went back to playing ping pong with the product guy who still thought React was a coding language, not a framework. Back at my desk, I slid open the top drawer and stared at the USB stick, tucked under an expired granola bar, and a post-it with a list of test credentials. It wasn't flashy, just an old 32 gigabytes drive I'd had since college. Worn to hell, Sharpie half-faded. Inside it was a copy of everything that mattered. One deeply buried, undocumented subdirectory. The kind you'd never notice unless you knew exactly what to look for. And no one but me ever looked that deep. Most people think backups are about safety, but sometimes they're about ownership. Proof. Insurance against people like Amanda who believe PowerPoint is a programming language. I pulled the drive out of the drawer slowly, like it might burn if I touched it wrong, slid it into my jacket pocket, left my mousepad, my notebook, even the weird cactus that somehow survived 3 winters under fluorescent lights. But not the drive. HR tried to run through their checklist during the exit interview. Was your experience at company positive overall? I smiled. Sure. She checked a box. Would you consider returning in the future? I laughed. She checked no. Then she asked if I had any equipment or intellectual property to return. I shook my head. Nope. Everything's in the repo. Cleaned and committed. She nodded like that meant anything and offered me a single paperclip as some sort of farewell gift. Said they were low on swag this quarter. I left it on her desk. Let her explain that one later. As I stepped into the parking lot, I didn't feel triumphant. Didn't feel free either. Just settled. Like something final had clicked into place. Something that had nothing to do with anger or revenge. More like gravity. They thought I was gone, but they had no idea what I left behind. 2 days after I walked out, they pushed the build live. Version 4.9.1. My version. It was the same stack I'd finalized just before handing in my badge. Wrapped up in a sleek little bow Amanda barely understood. She had the audacity to roll it out like a victory march, telling the clients it was a collaborative milestone and proof of agile scalability. I nearly choked on my coffee reading the press blurb. She couldn't even pronounce Kubernetes last quarter. But there it was live, functioning, quiet, and underneath it, nested inside a maintenance script disguised as a deprecated logging module, something else had started. A countdown. 7 days. Not from deployment. Amanda was too lazy to change the default pipeline variables. No, it started from the exact timestamp my credentials were removed from the Active Directory. I'd left it as a passive thread, a tiny condition most people would mistake for defensive redundancy. It wasn't even labeled clearly, just a short chain of triggers buried behind nested permissions, quietly verifying root ownership once a day. And when it stopped finding me, well, it had instructions. I wasn't watching out of spite. I wasn't even watching closely. I just wanted to know not if it would break, but how long it would take before someone noticed the shadow of me still running under the hood. Amanda gave a client presentation over Zoom on day 2. Full makeup, high-gloss smile, her favorite girl boss teal blazer. The headline on the slide: Seamless rollout achieved ahead of schedule. One of the investors on the call clapped. Literally clapped. Through a screen. I muted the audio and let the captions run while I scrolled through my private fork of the repo. The system was holding for now. No one had touched the core functions. Why would they? Amanda never understood the difference between stable and stagnant. If it wasn't on fire, it was invisible to her. Then, as if to underline the joke, she sent out an all-hands email. Subject: The future starts now. Body: With our latest deployment live, we're saying goodbye to legacy bottlenecks and stepping into a new era of innovation. We've got a tighter ship, a smarter code base, and no dead weight. Dead weight. I laughed so hard I scared the guy next to me at the cafe. Had to apologize and pretend it was a meme. They didn't even change the container tags. I ran a quick checksum out of habit and confirmed it. Every single file, every function, every dependency mine. Still intact. Still quietly checking for something that no longer existed. I sipped my coffee and opened my GitHub tab. No alerts yet. No issues filed. Not yet. Just a clean, dormant repo waiting for its moment. Amanda thought she launched a product. She didn't realize she'd lit a fuse. By day 3, the cracks started whispering. It began with a login timeout. Harmless at first. 1 or 2 users couldn't authenticate their sessions. Then 5. Then 12. Amanda waved it off in Slack like she was batting at a fruit fly. Growing pains. Cache needs a refresh. She tagged the intern to clear Redis manually. No one told her that wasn't the problem. A vendor pinged support about malformed JSON. Their webhook payloads were suddenly missing fields, random, inconsistent, but just enough to throw their automation into panic mode. The tech lead, bless his PowerPoint-trained soul, told them it was a time zone issue. Eastern. In October. On cloud infrastructure. Sure. The error logs began piling up in the shadows of the pipeline dashboard. No one knew where to look. Or more accurately, no one wanted to. Amanda had declared the rollout clean, so admitting anything was wrong meant challenging her narrative. And no one at that company had the spine to do that. Not anymore. The junior devs, though. They were twitchy. Green but not dumb. They knew when something smelled off. One of them, Kayla I think, was combing through the codebase when she stumbled onto a comment nested in a module no one was supposed to touch. It wasn't even code-heavy. Just a marker I left in plain English, buried under a function tagged as deprecated. Python kapuvatse cut / contingency trigger. If ID underscore J not verified within 168 hours, initiate sequence. / if you're reading this, it's too late to stop it the usual way. She screenshotted it, slapped it into the dev-only Slack channel with a caption. What the hell is this? 2 other juniors started poking at it. Amanda jumped in within 15 minutes, riding in on her usual condescension like it was a parade float. That's legacy. Ignore it. MJ had a lot of unfinished scraps. We're cleaning that stuff out as we go. Then she locked the thread. But the damage was done. The seed was planted. The kids were scared. Not of me, they barely knew who I was, but of something they couldn't quite explain. A ghost in the machine. An echo no one knew how to mute. Meanwhile, I was sitting on a park bench, latte in hand, watching the sunrise break over the skyline while GitHub quietly logged the growing forks on my private mirror. Someone had tried to open a PR. I ignored it. Wasn't time yet. There's a special kind of satisfaction in watching your absence become a problem. Amanda thought I was a roadblock. A maintenance chore. Now she was steering a car she couldn't see the dashboard of, hurtling straight into fog. And I wasn't even touching the wheel. Day 5 started with an emergency 8 a.m. stand-up Amanda pretended was routine. Half the team showed up in pajamas, cameras off, coffee still steeping in mismatched mugs. The vibe was brittle. You could hear the tension in how no one cracked a joke. By then the bugs weren't cute anymore. Logins were now failing at scale. The admin dashboard wouldn't load. Clients were filing tickets by the dozen, and the chatbot Amanda insisted was revolutionizing support workflows, kept glitching into Spanish for no reason. The devs were huddled in silent, frantic Slack threads. One poor junior posted a log snippet in #devhelp and tagged everyone. The error. Access denied. Signature mismatch. File. core/auth/verify.js. That was when Amanda finally admitted, out loud in front of everyone, okay, does anyone know if we have root access to MJ's build? Silence. You could have heard a stylus drop. Then Scott, the so-called tech lead who once asked me if JSON was the thing with the curly quotes, spoke up like he was explaining quantum physics to a toddler. He deployed through the secure pipeline. Full encryption. No backdoors. The certificate is tied to your token. You signed off. Amanda blinked. Wait. So, I own it. Scott shrugged in that gutless way of his. You own the cert. That's not the same as owning the system. They tried a rollback. Nothing fancy. Just a simple patch to bypass the broken auth module. Took them 2 hours to cobble together. When they pushed it live. Blocked. Hard. The pipeline spit it right back with a rejection message that wasn't even subtle. Error. Unauthorized signature. Commit rejected. Origin mismatch. Amanda stormed into Slack. Why is it rejecting our update? Scott again. It's locked to root level deploy. And root was MJ. She called legal. Legal said, is it in the contract? Amanda said, is what in the contract? They didn't answer. Because Amanda never asked what access meant when she clicked approve deployment 2 weeks ago with her usual flourish and a coffee stain on her blouse. She thought she was authorizing a product release. She didn't realize she put her digital signature on a vault she couldn't now open. One of the new devs, trying to be helpful, suggested spinning up a new environment. Start fresh, isolate the problem. Amanda looked like she might finally snap, but no. She smiled that pair of smile she wore like armor and said, "Let's stay the course. MJ's gone. We'll fix this." Meanwhile, I was across town, sitting in a greasy diner with a refillable mug, watching their domain's performance metrics stutter. The beautiful thing about well-built architecture? You don't need to sabotage it. You just build it to require accountability. And wait, day 6 was the unraveling. It started with a wave of password reset requests around 3:30 a.m. The kind of back-end traffic spike you don't see unless something's deeply wrong. Thousands of users locked out. No pattern. No region. Just gone. Like the system had collectively decided humanity no longer deserved access. By 6 a.m. the admin pages were failing. First it was just slow load times. Then partial renders. Then 404s. Like the infrastructure was vanishing floor by floor, and no one had hit the alarm yet. Amanda woke up to a full-blown firestorm. She dialed IT on speaker, voice cracking under the weight of forced calm. Roll back everything. I don't care how, just revert to the last working build. The IT manager, Brent, who never took off his Patagonia vest even in July, responded after a pause that could have killed a man. Roll back to what, exactly? Amanda blinked. What do you mean to what? Brent sighed audibly. There's no version control after the final merge. MJ locked the repo after pushing to main. You signed off. All commits passed that are hashed and immutable. She switched to full shriek. Then restore the previous environment. Another pause. He didn't leave any legacy branches. The old containers were wiped during deployment cleanup. It's all tied to the last cert, which doesn't authenticate anymore. Amanda dropped her phone. Literally dropped it. It clattered on her desk and didn't stop the silence that followed. A silence so loud her assistant peeked through the office door like she just heard a murder. Meanwhile, across the city I was asleep. Not curled in anticipation. Not waiting for headlines. Just asleep. Like a person who'd finished what they needed to do and let the universe sort out the rest. At exactly 2:14 a.m., the timer expired. There was no explosion. No dramatic system crash. Just a sequence of commands that ran like a lullaby. First, the load balancer rerouted traffic through a dead end. Then the service containers spun down one by one. Then the endpoints nulled themselves. Admin credentials scrubbed. Cron jobs killed. Every heartbeat in the system muted, one quiet line at a time. By the time Amanda tried to refresh the dashboard again, all that remained was a blank screen. No access. No logs. No recovery path. The site didn't crash. It simply ceased to exist. She thought she pulled off a flawless launch. What she launched was a countdown. And I didn't even have to be awake to watch it end. Amanda walked in at 9:03 a.m. wearing her usual crisis but make it fashion trench coat and a pair of sunglasses that probably cost more than the monthly dev budget she kept gutting. She didn't even make it past the front desk. The receptionist, some poor soul fresh out of community college, looked up, pale as printer paper, and just pointed. Something's wrong with the site. Amanda barked a laugh. Define wrong. But when she pulled out her phone and loaded the company homepage, the color drained from her face like someone yanked her bloodstream into a vacuum. It wasn't just down. It was gone. Number 404. No site under maintenance screen. Just a clean white background. One single centered heading. Former lead dev. Freelance now. Below that, a GitHub icon. Clickable. Public repo. Neatly organized folders. A full changelog. My name in bold at the top. Then the kicker, dead center, bold red font, Helvetica so crisp you could smell the ink. Corporate reacquisition license. $240,000. Due on receipt. No threats. No legalese. Just one invoice. Plain as day. Amanda screamed. Not figuratively. Not like ugh I'm stressed scream. This was the real thing. Raw vocal cords and a wheezing finish. Half the office stopped moving. Someone spilled their coffee. The intern next to the printer ducked like there was an active shooter. She stormed into the glass conference room and shouted, "Get legal." So hard the conference mic picked it up across 3 different Zoom calls. Legal showed up 10 minutes later in bad suits with good pens and already deep regret on their faces. She threw her phone at them. He hijacked our site. One of them squinted. It's a redirect to his GitHub. Another legal drone tapped the screen and frowned. But it's not malicious. He's not impersonating you. The certs were signed under your authority. And there's no breach. He owns the code. And technically the site isn't broken, it's just pointing somewhere else. Amanda looked like someone had smacked her across the jaw with a wet keyboard. We paid for that platform. Legal didn't look up. Not according to the contract. There's no IP reversion clause. You approved all the final builds. He even timestamped the repo. It's airtight. By that point, I was 3 lattes deep in a co-working loft downtown. Laptop open, music low, inbox blinking like a slot machine on cheat mode. 3 new inquiries since 8 a.m. 2 startups. 1 corporate recruiter. All with the same subject line. Saw the redirect, are you available? I didn't gloat. Didn't toast. Just smiled, the kind of smile you only earn by being ignored long enough to build quietly, thoroughly, and completely. Amanda was pacing like a caged cat in heels. Somewhere, a manager muttered. We should have paid her what she was worth. Too late. They didn't want to give me credit. So I just took ownership. The emergency board meeting was called for noon. Half the executives hadn't even finished their morning bagels when the calendar invite hit. Subject line. Urgent. Platform status plus legal risk. They filed in, tired and irritated, expecting a minor outage and a slap on the wrist for some underpaid IT grunt. What they got was a PowerPoint with 1 slide. A screenshot of the redirected homepage, complete with the GitHub link and the $240,000 invoice glowing like a crime scene spotlight. Amanda sat stiff at the head of the table, jaw clenched so tight she looked carved out of granite. Her lipstick was cracked. Her blazer, usually pressed to perfection, was wrinkled like she'd slept in it. No one offered her coffee. Legal started, voice thin and nervous. We've reviewed the codebase, the deployment logs, and the signed release authorizations. Our conclusion is clear. MJ did not violate any employment terms. Amanda barked out a laugh that landed like a cough. He sabotaged the entire platform. The general counsel didn't flinch. No, ma'am. He deployed a stable, functioning build. There was no malicious code, no breach. He retained ownership of certain components because your contract, he clicked to the next slide, did not include any intellectual property reversion clause. Silence. Thick, loaded silence. Then one board member, eyes narrowed, leaned forward. You said he was just a dev. Amanda didn't respond. The CEO, red in the face and visibly trying not to lose what little patience he had left, slammed his hand down. You said we didn't need him. That we had everything under control. Amanda stammered. He signed the offboarding. He returned his badge. Another exec chimed in, eyes locked on the invoice. Why did you delete his credentials before we had full control of the system? Amanda blinked. Because he quit. No, the CEO snapped. He resigned. And instead of transitioning his knowledge like a competent leader, you shut him out, wiped his access, and pushed live a system you didn't even understand. She opened her mouth to defend herself, but the board chair cut her off with a raised hand. Effective immediately, Amanda is placed on administrative leave pending internal investigation. The damage to client relationships alone warrants it. She stood up abruptly, knocking over her water. No one helped her clean it. She looked around the room for anyone to back her. No one even met her eyes. In the corner, the CTO whispered to the CFO. She was warned about MJ. She thought he was just some introvert with a keyboard. The CFO nodded grimly. Turns out he was the platform. And I was nowhere near that boardroom. I was on a video call with a new client, an AI startup out of Chicago, demoing one of the modules they'd seen in the public repo. Their CTO said, "We've never seen cleaner back-end logic." I just smiled. Let them talk. Let Amanda scream. I didn't need to be in the room. The system spoke for itself. The light through the window of the co-working space hit just right that morning, cool, clean autumn gray. I'd staked out a corner desk near the plants, far enough from the espresso machine to avoid the noise, close enough to snag hot coffee before it burned on the burner. My inbox was quiet for once. The firestorm had burned itself out. Amanda was off the grid. No press release. No apology. Just a quiet removal from the leadership page, like she'd never existed. I'd spent the last 2 days turning down half the offers in my inbox. One recruiter pitched me a VP of engineering role at a fintech firm with a neon logo and a ping pong table. I declined. Another offered $400,000 for a rebuild, tight deadline, high pressure, full control. I considered it. Left it unread. Then, just as I was writing documentation for one of my modules, Slack pinged. It was from Kayla, the junior dev. One of the only ones who'd even noticed the cracks before the floor gave way. Her message. Respect. That was beautiful. No emojis. No fluff. Just the kind of message that lands like a handshake. I stared at it for a second, then smiled just a little. At 10:43 a.m., the notification came in. Stripe. Payment received. $240,000. Line item. Corporate reacquisition license paid in full. I didn't celebrate. Didn't screenshot it. Just opened my GitHub and updated the repo description with 3 new lines. Platform reacquired. Site available for relaunch. Support packages start at $18,000 per month. That was it. Simple. Direct. Mine. A guy 2 seats over, stranger, probably freelancing for some e-commerce brand, glanced at my screen and said, "You built that?" I nodded. "Yeah. A while ago." He whistled low. "Clean work. You're open for contracts." "Selective," I said. He handed me a card. Pocketed it. Might follow up. Might not. Back on screen, the GitHub stars were ticking up again. Forks rising. The system lived. Not because someone paid for it. Not because it made headlines. But because it worked honestly, quietly, like I always did. And as I closed my laptop for the day, the last line echoed through my head like a final commit message whispered into clean, finished code. She stole my code. I just made sure it knew who it belonged to.